You're streaming CBS News Bay Area.
It was a rescue mission like no other. 50 years ago, we're sitting down with the women who helped usher a flight to freedom just days before the fall of Saigon.
Their lives would have all been in danger if they'd stayed.
And we shared an adventure together that we'll never forget.
Plus, millions of people back then forced to make an impossible choice: leave the only home they've ever known or face grave danger.
She asked me to stay back with her. Yeah, my mom.
I'll meet a woman who made a narrow escape after the Vietnam War and made a new life here in the Bay Area. And we'll introduce you to a South Bay man embarking on a hike from San Jose to Southern California, honoring refugees of the war.
Something struck me, saying that even I was a little kid, telling me that, your story needs to be heard.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Ann Makovic. It has been 50 years since the fall of Saigon, the final loss for South Vietnam as the North rolled into their capital, ending a long and brutal war. More than 58,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese lost their lives in that conflict. Just 6 days before the war finally came to a close, there was a daring and dramatic rescue mission flying into Saigon. On board that empty Pan Am 747, some flight attendants based out of San Francisco who stepped forward to save hundreds of Vietnamese civilians. Elizabeth Cook has their remarkable story.
North of San Francisco, overlooking Tamales Bay, these women gathered to remember.
And we shared an adventure together that we'll never forget.
Their names: Sue, Pamela, Laura Lee, and Cha.
It was April of 1975. They were all stewardesses for Pan Am Airways, and they all volunteered for an extremely dangerous mission.
There wasn't any question we were going to go in and do what we could that could help.
Thousands of people were roaming Da Nang airfield.
6 days before the fall of Saigon, the situation was chaotic. The FAA banned all commercial flights in and out of Vietnam. But Pan Am got special permission for one final journey.
In the middle of the night, Pan Ops called me and asked me if I would volunteer to go in to Saigon on a rescue mission. And I said yes.
The goal? To evacuate Pan Am's Vietnamese employees and families.
They were working for an American company. I believe their lives would have all been in danger if they'd stayed.
The crew was willing to cram even more on board, including Cha's 4 teenage sisters.
My sisters, of course, is so scared.
On the flight, extra uniforms and wigs. The plan? To dress each sister as a Pan Am stewardess. Then, one by one, the disguised teens drove out to the plane, passing soldiers armed with machine guns.
Without my help, I don't think they had the way of getting out of the country.
They boarded nearly 100 more passengers than the plane could seat.
It was packed, every inch.
When the jumbo jet took off,
there was gunfire that we could hear. We knew that the airport was surrounded. We knew that. What I recall was the deafening silence.
People were crying. We were crying. We were sad that they had to leave that way.
All credit their pilot, the late Captain Bob Berg, as being the real hero.
He told us when we got on the ground that he would not leave anyone behind, that he would turn the red flashing light on, and that meant get back to the airplane as quickly as possible.
Such a treasure, and such a man filled with humility and bravery and courage.
Qualities shared by these women today and 50 years ago on a flight to freedom.
The Pan Am Historical Museum in New York held an event bringing together adoptees evacuated from Saigon with all of the people that made those life-saving missions possible. As Saigon fell, 3 million people began to leave Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Some families were able to make their escape together. Others had to make the heart-wrenching decision to separate, and that includes the mother of former KPIX reporter Kit Do, who made the harrowing journey from Vietnam to San Jose while she was about to give birth. Kit shares with us how his mom left one generation behind to protect the next.
Vietnamese call it Black April, but for one woman in San Jose, April 30th, 1975 is bittersweet. When she left April 28th, Ngang Yim was 9 months pregnant.
It's almost due day. Yeah, it's really big.
The decision to leave was also big. One person had already made up her mind.
She asked me to stay back with her. Yeah, my mom.
So in the midst of one of the most turbulent times in Vietnam's history, Nga was forced to make a heart-wrenching choice: escape with her husband or stay with her mother.
I say, Mom, I don't know when I have chance to see you again, but I need to go fight the freedom.
Nga hasn't seen her old wedding photos in years. She thought they were lost.
They are my family. I love everybody in the picture.
As hundreds crowded the American embassy, the situation was just as desperate at the airports. Nga wore a big black coat, fearing they wouldn't let her on the plane. Did you have to hide it?
Yeah, I had to hide it. I might have the baby on the plane. That's why we had to try to cover up.
It worked. They flew to Guam, a U.S. territory with a naval base with thousands of other refugees.
30th April 1975. I feel I had a son baby.
Contraction?
Yeah, contraction. Yeah.
By then, North Vietnamese tanks rumbled toward the presidential palace and crashed down the gates. Saigon had fallen. 9:31 that same morning.
Yeah, and I had a baby. Easy.
As she laid in that hospital bed, it suddenly occurred to her that in the chaos of the past 2 days, she had not decided on her son's name. And then it came.
My son's name, Do Anh Kiệt.
Which in Vietnamese has a special meaning.
Giống như là không có sợ gì hết.
Courage?
Yeah, courage.
My mother left Vietnam with nothing.
I know, thank God, I found the freedom.
And raised a son who loves her and is thankful for having been born in freedom.
As Saigon fell, the U.S. launched mass evacuations of orphaned children and babies from South Vietnam, many of them winding up here in the Bay Area after a daring mission dubbed Operation Babylift.
Okay, Wayner, thank you very much. And let's check right back in with Andy Park and Lynn Joyner at the Oakland International Airport as they continue to bring those 57 children off of that plane. As you can see, they're coming on down. And Andy, if you can hear me, you're back on live television again.
50 years ago, an historic event unfolded late at night, live on Channel 5.
I am right at the foot of the stairway now, and you can probably see that little one who just came down. The people going up, again, are the blanket brigade. They're taking up blankets, they wrap a child in it, and bring them down.
On board this World Airways plane, dozens of young children airlifted out of Vietnam. Among them, a baby girl promised to Ralph and Marilyn Norberg.
She looks like a healthy, normal child.
The Norbergs 50 years ago and the Norbergs today.
It was just such a defining moment in our lives because we'd wanted to have children and we're having a hard time. And when she came, it was just such a gift.
It's really amazing to meet our first child and get to know her.
From the airport, the children were loaded up on a bus and driven to San Francisco. The vast majority were processed here at the Presidio Army Base in this building known as Harmon Hall. The Presidio switchboard was swamped with compassionate calls.
Calls offering everything from clothes and blankets from Arkansas to people from Alaska and Brooklyn who want to adopt children.
But it was quite a mob scene because we had press everywhere.
When the Norbergs first met Wendy,
she was actually very, very easygoing.
She was adorable. She still is.
Wendy Norberg 50 years ago.
Happy birthday, dear Wendy. Happy.
And Wendy Norberg today, celebrating her 51st birthday.
I view myself definitely as being American.
Wendy went back to Vietnam 10 years ago and saw her orphanage, but says the Bay Area is home. As for Operation Babylift, she doesn't dwell on it.
I don't really feel like I'm part of it. I just every 10 years get reminded.
We're just so proud of her, and excuse me, it's been such a time. She's such a wonderful family member.
Wendy is an accomplished photographer. Most recently, she's captured images of Bay Area activism, people striving to change the world.
I'm not necessarily picking a side. I'm documenting a moment in history.
Around us are just a swarm of volunteers, doctors, nurses.
Wendy's historic journey was captured by Channel 5. Now, 50 years later, she's on the other side of the lens. Leading up to the fall of Saigon for most of April of 1975, the U.S. government airlifted almost 2,600 Vietnamese children to America for adoption. But Operation Babylift was not without controversy. At San Francisco's Crissy Field, an old building sits largely unnoticed. But 50 years ago, here inside Harmon Hall, an event unfolded that changed the lives of thousands, including the lives of 3 little girls. Laura.
We all survived a lot of trauma.
Wendy.
And I find that I think about it less and less.
And Tricia.
The fall of Saigon was happening, and they just said, we got to get everybody out.
In April 1975, the 3 arrived at Harmon Hall along with hundreds of other Vietnamese children, all with adoption papers, thanks to a series of historic flights called Operation Babylift. President Gerald Ford, who authorized the effort, arrived at SFO to take a baby off the plane. Laura, now a musician, was adopted by a military officer and his wife.
All right.
Tricia, a teacher, found a new home with the family in Orange County. And Wendy, an accomplished photographer, was embraced by a shipbuilder and his wife.
We'd heard about the children that needed homes, and that we were just so concerned about what was happening over there.
You're back on live television again.
But the Babylift was not without controversy. At Harmon Hall, as the children were processed, some volunteers spoke Vietnamese with them.
They discovered that a significant number of them had families, and that they were not orphans.
East Bay attorney Tom Miller immediately filed a class action lawsuit to determine who was eligible for adoption. He says some parents put their kids on planes to save them, hoping to join them later in the U.S.
All of this would have been preventable if the U.S. government had operated responsibly right from the very beginning.
A judge denied the lawsuit and sealed the records. Years later, international family law expert Ron Koltz did a deeper dive.
I discovered widespread misconduct.
Koltz researched federal, state, and court records involving the Babylift. She found nearly half of the children arrived with forged or fake identities.
I feel a grave sadness.
Today, many of the adoptees have turned to DNA tests to uncover their past. Tricia's results had a match. Her biological father had also taken a test.
He was searching for 35 years.
Laura's parents remain unknown.
Initially, I was hoping that one day my parents would see me singing on TV and they would come find me. And we'd live happily ever after.
As for Wendy, she had no desire to find any biological relative.
To me, that's not important at all.
All 3 love their adoptive parents. Wendy is busy with photography. Tricia adopted a daughter.
I had a great life with my family. I adopted family. And I survived.
But some of the adoptees suffered abuse after arriving in the U.S., including Laura. She now uses her music to help foster and adopted children who have suffered trauma.
It's my superpower. And if I can make change with music, with other young adoptees or foster kids or survivors, I would like that.
The end of the war was just the beginning for 3 very different women whose stories are still being written. The end of the Vietnam War also marked the biggest helicopter evacuation in history, when more than 1,000 Americans and thousands of Vietnamese citizens were rescued from the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. That historic moment marking an end to the fighting between North and South Vietnam. So many powerful images coming out of that conflict that still resonate today, and that includes this airman reuniting with his family at Travis Air Force Base after spending 5 years as a prisoner of war. This picture, put into 3 simple words, burst of joy, would go on to win the Pulitzer Prize. Steve Large spoke with one of the subjects of that photo, who now lives in Mountain View.
A burst of joy. This iconic photo, a family running towards their father, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Robert Sturm, a prisoner of war in Vietnam for 5 years, freed, and finally home at Travis Air Force Base in 1973. His 15-year-old daughter, Lori, first to her dad for the long-awaited embrace. 5 decades later, that then teenage girl still lives within driving distance of Travis Air Force Base. In this home,
Lori.
Hi, Steve.
So nice.
I met her here,
Come on in.
Thank you so much.
where that photo now hangs prominently by her front door.
It is just a glorious moment in time of my dad coming home to his family.
Her first words to her father in that famous moment?
Nothing profound, just, oh, daddy, oh, daddy, oh, daddy.
Not profound, but pure.
It was absolutely pure.
Now married with adult children of her own, Lori Kitching's father remains her hero.
25 June 1970. Dearest Lori and kids,
She saved the letters he wrote from prison camp.
I pray my absence will not mar the children's life.
Heartbreaking and heartwarming.
I'm so proud of my teenage girl.
Always with perfect penmanship.
My love and prayers to all. Bob. Wow.
Lori also has her dad's prison uniform,
They were released in order of their shoot-down date.
carefully packed in a suitcase issued him upon his release.
The Vietnamese told him that the sandals were made out of the tires of his aircraft that it was flying.
This is National Archive video showing her father, Lieutenant Colonel Sturm, as he was released from captivity in Vietnam. The plane with an American flag ready to take him and other POWs home. One of Lieutenant Sturm's prison mates, John McCain, was shot down 1 day before Sturm.
That's a great story.
The 2 pilots shared a wall in solitary confinement and communicated in a tapping code.
And so John McCain was tapping a joke to my dad through the walls. And my dad said that's the first time he laughed when he was in jail. First time he laughed. And that was 1970.
Lori's father never did tell her the joke.
It must have been pretty good to laugh over
That he actually
code.
laughed. Yeah.
Do you find yourself reflecting on days like this, or
Yes.
with these milestones?
Yes. It's still very fresh in my heart, in my mind, in my life.
A war that created a deep divide in a country her father served to protect.
There were a lot of people who were just against the United States being involved at all.
Now, how do you think the Vietnam War has come to define you?
Wow, that's a hard question. I hope that I'm more empathetic.
Lori says the Vietnam War has helped her to seek understanding. This Pulitzer Prize-winning photo, taken at Travis Air Force Base, focusing on Lori Kitching's American family, and a snapshot of Vietnam War service and sacrifice.
The now retired Colonel Robert Sturm is 92 years old. After he was released from captivity in 1973, he remained in the Air Force, continuing to fly until 1977. Lee Lam, whose family fled Vietnam, kicked off a 1,000-kilometer journey to honor the mass exodus of Vietnamese refugees 50 years ago, as well as the hundreds of thousands who were lost at sea. He's going to hike down the California coast before ending at a park in Fountain Valley, one of the cities that makes up Orange County's Little Saigon. Arlen Ramirez caught up with him as he got ready for his journey to find out what's driving him.
I call it Mobile Command Center. It's not quite done yet.
Lee Lam is preparing for a 50-day, 1,000-kilometer hike along the California coast to remember the boat people.
So we're gonna take it, one day at a time.
It's part of a mission of his that began when he was a child and survived his own harrowing voyage at sea on an overcrowded boat to escape Vietnam with his family. Now in his late 50s, Lee wants to be sure the estimated 400,000 Vietnamese refugees who did not make it to freedom will not be forgotten.
This 1,000-kilometer hike is not just a hike, right? It's it's a moving tribute to the boat people who lost at sea. Also to celebrate at the same time to those who made it through.
After a 15-month journey that included stays in refugee camps, Lee's family resettled in Oakland. He was in middle school when a teacher assigned his class to write a journal, and he wrote about being in the boat.
There were times that the wave was so big that when the boats go down like this, you see nothing but wall of water. Something struck me saying that, even though I was a little kid, telling me that, your story needs to be heard. So I love nature.
Lee is an avid hiker and has been planning and preparing for this journey for years.
One of the heights that stands out is Mount Whitney.
He mapped out his route, which is filled with symbolism. For most of the trip, he will be inside of the Pacific Ocean. And the 50 days represent 50 years that the boat people have been in the U.S. And he's hiking from Little Saigon in San Jose to a sister community in Westminster.
These are the two places that has the biggest Vietnamese community. And I thought it would be a great thing to do from this Little Saigon to Southern California Saigon.
And although he's setting out alone, he hopes to be joined along the way by others.
I would love to have boat people, refugee, to just come out, hike with me for an hour, 1 kilometer, or just sit and have lunch with me and share the story.
In middle school, he wrote the first chapter of his story, and over the next 50 days, he'll add the latest chapters, one step at a time.
If the hike goes according to schedule, Lam will reach Orange County by June 19th. Thanks for joining us as we look back at 50 years since the end of the Vietnam War. I'm Ann Makovic. We're going to have more stories marking the fall of Saigon. Just head to our website, KPIX.com.